Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. This episode of Amateur Traveler is sponsored by AutoSlash. AutoSlash may be the best way to find the lowest possible rate when you rent a car. They'll help you find the best rate and then will continue to look for an even better rate in case it goes down. Autoslash.com.
I got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo.
Amateur Traveler, episode 607. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about castles and bridges, caves and a labyrinth, markets and baths as we go to Budapest in Hungary.
I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. We'll hear more from our sponsor, AutoSlash, in a bit, but first, let's talk about Budapest. I'd like to welcome back to the show Jennifer Dombrowski from Lux Adventure Traveler. That's Lux, L-U-X-E, luxadventuretraveler.com, who's come to talk to us about Budapest. Jennifer, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Chris. It's great to be back.
I'm anxious to do a show on Budapest. It's been a long time since we have done one, and I'm actually taking a group of listeners of the show to Prague, Krakow, and Budapest this year. So we'll probably do another one later on, but I want to hear more about the city that I'm going to go see for the first time. You have been there now more than once, as I recall.
Yes, I have been there 5 times, I believe. It was a really easy drive when I used to live in Italy. It was about 6 hours from northern Italy. So my husband and I, we used to go about once a year, and I think it was around 5 times that we went. It's one of our favorite European cities, so I love talking about Budapest.
Cool. And you are currently still based in Europe. We have done a show with you most recently on Bordeaux, if people are interested in that. We've also done another show on the Seychelles, but today, Budapest. So first of all, let's put it on a map. Where are we talking about?
We are talking about Hungary. So not Western Europe, kind of in the center, and we're going to border Austria.
Bordering Austria, Slovakia, Romania, Ukraine, Croatia, Slovenia,
I believe, and Serbia. So right
Yes.
there in the middle of Central Europe. Excellent. And why are we talking about Budapest? Why should people go to Budapest?
Budapest is a really great city to go to because not a ton of tourists are going yet. It's still kind of relatively undiscovered, even though more people are starting to go. And the prices are really good. So in places like Venice and Rome and Paris, the prices are a little more expensive these days with the exchange rate. But when you go to Central Europe, the prices are still really good. So it's considered pretty inexpensive. Yet there's still really good food. You do have luxury hotels if you're a luxury traveler, but you can also find really good deals on places like apartments to stay in. I don't stay in hostels, but I know that there's really great hostels.
You've done your time in hostels? Is that what?
But I do know that there are some really great hostels that travelers love to stay in. And there's kind of a little bit for everybody, too. If you're younger, millennial, you like to go out, there's the different rune bars and there's a good nightlife scene. But if you're a little bit on the older end of the spectrum and you're starting to appreciate going to bed earlier, but still like to enjoy a cocktail, there is Hungarian wine, so you can go out and go to a wine bar or a nice dinner cruise on the Danube River. So there's a little bit of everything for everyone there. So I think it's a great choice no matter who you are.
Cool. And what sort of itinerary would you recommend for tackling Budapest?
I think that 4 to 5 days in Budapest is a good amount of time if you're coming and you want to kind of explore other places in Europe, because like you said, you're taking a group and you're hitting several different European cities. So I think 4 to 5 days is a good amount of time to spend there where you can really get a feel and explore both sides of the river, because the Danube River does divide Budapest into two parts. So you have the Buda side and the Pest side.
And we should say it's Budapest, not Budapest. And that's probably the only word of Hungarian that we may get close to pronouncing correctly. Is that fair to say?
I think so. It's a tough language, and I'll do my darndest to make sure I don't butcher it. But
yeah, linguistically only similar to Finnish in Europe and different from all of the Romance languages and all the Germanic languages.
we'll try to do our best with the names. But back to the itinerary. So you have sort of the main tourist attractions that you would want to check out when you're in the city. Budapest has, of course, the beautiful Danube River. And one of the main things that you can do is you can take either a lunch or a dinner time cruise down the river. And I do think a nighttime cruise is the best time to do this because the city is absolutely gorgeous, lit up as all of the buildings' lights come on at nighttime. So I think dinner is a really great time to go. And some of the cruise companies, you can either just do a sightseeing cruise and have the audio that is explaining the different buildings that you're seeing as you go down the river, or you can take a dinner cruise with traditional Hungarian cuisine and enjoy a little bit of music, a little bit of Hungarian wine, the scenery, and the food. And that's my favorite way to have a cruise down the Danube.
And what else are some of those must-see typical kind of things? Let's start with those.
So spanning the Danube River, you have one of Europe's most beautiful bridges. And this one's easy to remember and to pronounce. It's called the Chain Bridge. It's really nice to walk across the Chain Bridge, and then there is a park that leads up to the Buda Castle. And so you get some really nice views of the bridge, the Danube, and the Parliament on the other side of the river by walking up through this park. You can also visit the castle. And if you don't want to go inside of the castle, you can wander around the exterior of the castle, and there's some really, really fantastic viewpoints looking over the city from there.
Well, and you say up to, so as I understand it, Buda is a hill and Pest is flat.
Right.
And Buda is where the nobles and whoever was in charge would live, and then Pest was where everyone else would live traditionally.
Right.
Okay.
In the Buda Castle, one of the interesting things, especially because I really love wine, so I'm always interested in learning about the local wines when I travel. Mm-hmm. So on the Buda side, beneath Buda Castle, there is a secret wine cellar where one of Hungary's top sommeliers has opened a wine shop. And he and his wife travel around to Hungary's 22 wine regions each year, searching out the best to supply their cellar with. So they have a fantastic wine tasting that you can do there, and they'll take you through the various wine regions of Hungary through a tasting with a food pairing. So I think that's something that's really interesting to do. And a lot of people don't know about these cave systems that are beneath the castle on the Buda side of the river.
I think it's the first time I'd heard about them. You know, you're not betraying some confidants here telling us about the secret wine tavern here.
No, definitely not. The owner, his name is Gabor, and he absolutely loves talking about wine and about Hungary. So he definitely wants you to know about this and to come.
And you say his name is Gabor, which happens to be the name of at least 2 or 3 famous Hungarians I know. Any relation?
Well, I don't know about that,
okay.
But it's possible, I suppose.
Okay. Where to next?
So also staying on the Buda side of the river and still speaking about the caves. Mm-hmm. Now, if you want to get adventurous and have a little urban adventure in the city, something else that people don't know about is that there is a cave tour that you can do. Now, the caves here are not what I like to call as show caves.
Okay.
They're not the kind where you have a nice paved pathway or some little touristic train that takes you in and you can admire these lit up stalactites and stalagmites. This is more of a rustic cave. So if you're going to do this, you shouldn't be claustrophobic and you should really kind of have an adventurous spirit. Because you're going to put on some overalls, and those overalls are definitely going to get muddy and dirty. And you're going to have to maneuver your body into some interesting poses, like the Superman pose, where you're going to tuck one arm along your side and the other over your head and wiggle through really tight spaces. But I've done this. And it's actually really interesting to see this natural part of Hungary beneath Budapest, because it's not something that you would expect to be right there in the heart of a city like Budapest.
Interesting. And I just heard the audience almost audibly splitting into 2 groups. One perked up and said, "Wow, that sounds cool," and the other one was more in the hell no camp. So
now, if you still are interested in exploring the cave system beneath Budapest, but that it sounds a little outside of your comfort zone, you can also visit the labyrinths beneath Buda Castle. And what's interesting about these is that they were closed down for a long time. The locals would go down, kids would have raves and different things. And so the police were forced to close the labyrinth system down for many, many years. And it recently reopened, and there is 1 mile of labyrinths that you can explore. And Budapest is actually linked with Dracula, even though we tend to think of Dracula with Romania.
Transylvania, right, in Romania. Uh-huh.
Vlad Tepes, who was better known as Count Dracula, never actually lived in the castle in Transylvania. He did, however, live in Budapest, and he's linked with the labyrinths below the Buda Castle. So you can go down and you can wander around these labyrinths. They'll give you a lantern with a candle to wander around. And down here, everything's much more open than the previous natural caves that we were talking about. And actually, our dog even went with us into the labyrinth. And you can wander around, and there's some historical explanations about how the labyrinths were used and the link with Count Dracula down there. So that's something that's a little less adventurous and claustrophobic than the natural caves.
Now, some labyrinths are mazes and some are not. Some there's one path that you follow. Which is this? Is this something that I need to worry about getting lost in?
You don't need to worry about getting lost in it. It is a little bit of a maze system, but they have signage directing you to the way out, so you can explore, but you won't get trapped or you won't get lost. So that's not something you have to worry about.
Okay. Let's take a break here and hear again from our sponsor. Again, the sponsor of this episode is AutoSlash. AutoSlash is going to help you find a rental car at a good price by not only searching across different rental car companies, but also searching for different discounts that would be available through AAA, Costco, AARP, credit cards, frequent flyer programs, and all those things. They're going to check literally hundreds of coupons and discount codes, which I don't know about you, but I don't have time to do that myself. And then after it helps you find the best available rate, it's going to continue to look for price drops and better deals. If it finds a lower rate, then it will email you so you can take advantage of the savings. It's like price protection for your rental. It's almost like having an assistant who is fully dedicated to finding you the best deal on a rental car. I have not used it personally, but I have a friend who has and had a good experience. They say that renters on average save 30% or more using AutoSlash. Check them out. Autoslash.com. You mentioned the castle, but you said you may not want to go in. Do you recommend visiting the castle?
I do recommend visiting the castle. I think it's really interesting, and it does have all of this history with the Hungarian royalty and things like that. But sometimes people start to get the impression, same with churches, that if you've been in one castle, you've been into all of them. So I think it's an interesting castle to visit, but if you don't want to go in, there's certainly a lot of other parts of it to explore, like beneath.
Excellent. Anything else we want to do in Buda?
You also have the Fisherman's Bastion, which is located around the castle hill. And this provides a really beautiful panoramic view of the city. So you definitely want to wander around the turrets of the Fisherman's Bastion.
When you say so it's just a particular bastion in the walls around the castle?
Yes, it's made up of 7 different turrets.
Okay.
And so you can wander down along this stretch for the views over Budapest.
Okay.
And then one other thing that you want to do before you leave the Buda side is you want to go up to the Gellert Hill. And the Gellert Hill is the highest point on the Buda Hill. And what's interesting about this is, again, it's a beautiful park with an even better panoramic view over all of Budapest and a little bit of the countryside, even beyond. But over here, you also have where they took the statues from the communist times and they placed them into this one park. So it's kind of interesting to see the old communist statues that have been placed here, because even though they didn't want them sort of tarnishing their city anymore, they didn't want to get rid of them entirely because it was still a really important part of their history.
Okay. Interesting. So if we want to go say hello to some of the Russian and Hungarian leaders, that's where we would go. So to Lenin or Stalin. Well, I don't even, do they even have a Stalin one?
I believe that they do.
Do they? Okay.
There's quite a few of the communist leaders, and I'm trying to picture exactly which ones that they are. So don't quote me on that, but I think
Okay.
that there is. But the other thing that's up there that is also interesting on the Gellert Hill is there's a traditional Hungarian market where you can find Hungarians selling their handicrafts, like dolls are made, and they're very a beautiful souvenir to take home, especially if you have children. They also hand make wooden toys, different traditional clothing, and scarves. And you can also find the Hungarian peppers, like the pimento. that they use in cooking. And so you'll find people selling the Hungarian pepper spice there.
Okay.
So there's a nice market up there as well.
Now, the pepper spice, is that the same as paprika, which I am used to?
It's a little bit spicier, and you
Okay.
can get it mild or you can get it really spicy. So it's not quite the same
Okay.
as paprika, but it's very, very similar to that.
Okay, because that's what I think of as Hungarian spice, but again, having not been there, that's what I was curious about. Okay, interesting.
And so wandering back down to cross the river, after doing all this climbing, you have earned a pastry from Budapest's oldest confectioner, which is also on the Buda side. So this place is called Café Roseworm.
Okay.
They make these just indulgent chocolate pastries, which Hungary is really known for their pastries and their truffles and their chocolates. So this is a really great cafe to go to. It's all done in antique furniture. There's the old confectionery trade and work equipment that they used to use. They're
Okay.
a little bit more modern now, but you can see all of the old equipment sort of in a little confectionery museum that they have, and their
Okay.
pastries are just absolutely to die for.
And is there a particular one you recommend? I see a lot of torts.
They do all these different chocolate cakes, and they're really all fabulous. But some of them can be really rich. So one of the ones that I really like is it's kind of cut with dark cherries through the chocolate.
Okay.
So it gives you a little bit of that freshness from the fruit and cuts the richness of the chocolate. So I think picking one with the cherries is always nice.
Excellent.
So we are now ready to cross the river. We've explored Buda and we're going to head over to Pest. So one of the top attractions on this side of the river to visit is the Parliament. And the Parliament is a beautiful building from the exterior, but even more so from the inside. So this is definitely one of the places that you want to take the tour and go inside of and see it for yourself.
And this is the one that's right on the river, great big building that stands out in almost every photo you see of
Yes,
Budapest
it
is this building.
The iconic
Yep. Okay.
building for sure.
Okay.
Now, the other really iconic thing to do on the Pest side is to visit one or maybe more than one of the bathhouses. So I do have a favorite, and it's the Széchenyi baths. And these are the ones that you've probably also seen a photo of because they have thermal baths that are outside. So no matter what time of the year, even in the wintertime, I've been there at Christmas time when it's been snowing outside, the water is still warm enough to sit and enjoy almost like you're sitting in a jacuzzi outdoors. And it's just the ambiance of the Széchenyi baths is really fantastic.
Well, and they have quite a bath tradition in Hungary, is my impression. Is this is not just a Budapest thing, but a Hungarian thing. Hungarians are to baths as Finns are to saunas.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And while we were there, are we getting the massage, or is that do we need a special level of courage to do
I think
that?
it's kind of up to you. So the bathhouses, they do offer massages, but I always kind of find that it's a little more institutional feeling than
Okay.
going to a spa. So I will say that with Széchenyi, it's the outdoor part of the baths that I really enjoy most. And there are 3 outdoor pools that are very large, and they each vary in temperatures. So you can pick really kind of between about 35 degrees Celsius and 37 degrees Celsius. So around 90 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
It's really comfortable to sit outside no matter what time of the year. Now, I really don't enjoy the indoor baths at Széchenyi.
Okay.
The inside of it does feel like a hospital a bit.
Okay.
We have to think about the fact that these baths were a health ritual that
Sure.
people did. And so they didn't just sit outside in a jacuzzi. They went and they had various treatments that helped with circulation and arthritis and different respiratory illnesses and things like that. So it does have a little bit of a hospital institutional feel once you go inside. And the indoor pools, they're much smaller than outside. So whereas outside you can have maybe 100 people enjoying the bath and still have your personal space to be able to move around. Indoors, the pools will really only hold comfortably maybe 10 people.
Okay.
We always spent all of our time outdoors because of the ambiance of it.
Anything you need to know that's different about going to the baths in Budapest or in Hungary than there would be if we were going in some other country?
So you do want to bring a bathing suit with you when you go. If you can bring a towel with you when you go, that's best. They do have towels, but you rent them. So there's an additional fee that you'll pay in order to rent your towel. And then you get part of the deposit back when you return the towel at the end. Okay. But the towels it's almost like a sheet, like our bed sheet material. Okay. So I don't find that they're really absorbent. And if you're wrapping them around you to walk from pool to pool, especially if you're visiting in the times of the year where it's colder outside, it's already wet. And so then it doesn't dry you off as well when you want to get dressed at the end. So if you can bring your own towel, I recommend doing that. And you also want to bring a pair of flip-flops or sandals that are easy to remove, because if you're moving from pool to pool, especially if you're staying outdoors, the tile or the pavement that you're walking on can be very cold.
And the indoor baths date from 1913 and the outside from 1927. I was just curious because they're quite attractive, the outside pools. You were talking about the inside one looking more like a hospital, but the outside ones look more like the place you go to see and be seen too, because there are even places to sit and watch. Exactly.
So the Széchenyi baths that we've been talking about, they were intended to be a temporary establishment, and they originally opened in 1881. And then when they decided that it had become really popular and it would be a good thing to keep for the Hungarian people there, then they expanded it and they added the first medicinal baths, which is the indoor part, and why it looks more hospital-like in 1913. And then they added the outside in 1927. And this is Budapest's very first bathhouse, and it's also the largest. It's the largest in Europe, in fact.
Yeah, that's what it said. Interesting.
And the baths are naturally spring-fed as well. The water comes from all of those cave systems that we were talking about way below Budapest.
Cool.
So there is there's more than one other bathhouse in Budapest, but one of the other really popular ones that people go to is called the Gellert baths. Now this one, the difference between Gellert and Széchenyi is that there are no outdoor pools at Gellert.
Okay.
So Gellert is actually on the other side, on the Buda side, on the Gellert Hill. And it's a really beautiful bathhouse. So you do stay inside, and it doesn't have that hospital-like feel of the interior of the Széchenyi baths. Okay. This one, you have just beautiful architecture and fountains, and there's a area where there's a Roman-style swimming pool inside. And this is sort of the wow spot of the Gellert baths when you go in. And this one is really great for families because there's pools that are just for children. There's co-ed pools. There's also pools that are separate, only women or only men. So this one's a good one for the entire family to go to. And you kind of have lounge chairs that you can lounge around the various pools, and there's a beautiful glass atrium that stretches the entire length of the Roman style swimming pool. So it's totally just a different feel and vibe than Cecchini. So go to one or go to both even.
All right.
One of the other things that you can do on the Pest side is there's different cathedrals and churches that you can visit, and a lot of great architecture on this side of the river. It's easily walkable, but one of the most fun ways that we've explored on that side is to take a Segway tour, which sounds a little cheesy, but the guides,
cheesy, sure, but
the guides are really great, and you can cover a lot of ground in a reasonable amount of time. And I think what's great about whether you do it on a Segway or you do a walking tour or bike tour, however you want to go around, if you take a guided tour, you can find out about some spots that the locals know, or they'll point out interesting things that you want to go back to.
So that's almost, instead of like the hop on, hop off, you would say the Segway tour might even be better in Budapest.
I think so, because with these European cities, sometimes the hop on, hop off tours, they can't really take you into the heart of things. But with the Segway tour, you can pretty much go anywhere and you can cover a lot of ground. So you're kind of zipping in and out, and you find plenty of photo opportunities and more cafes, coffee houses, places to eat.
Well, and one nice thing about doing one of those overall kind of guides, whether it's a walking tour, a Segway tour, or whatever, is that kind of, when you're in Rome, asking where's the best gelato, or when you're in Budapest, what's the best coffee house. And I should say, even though I mock a little with the Segway tours, I like a Segway tour. I've only done one once or twice, but they are real fun. As a nerd, especially, I think the technology is just marvelous. So yes, people may laugh and point at you and laugh, but if you haven't done one, I would recommend it. They are very fun.
And the locals, they get so used to seeing them that they've stopped pointing and laughing a long time ago.
And you mentioned that I might learn some of the cafes or restaurants that I want to go back to later. Are there some that you would recommend?
One of the places that I would recommend to go and sample and kind of have a little bit of everything is the Central Market Hall. Okay. So this is the largest indoor market in Budapest, and there's two levels to it, actually. So the bottom level is really typical produce. The locals are coming, they're buying their meat, their fish, their produce, their spices, just like we would go to the grocery store to do. Okay. But there's also a second level where you have a food hall with the vendors selling everything from sausages to the Hungarian pepper spice that we were talking about. You can find Hungarian wines here. So you can really put together an inexpensive lunch where you can try a bunch of different things from the market hall.
As we're doing that kind of picnicky sort of food, is there something that we really ought to try because we're in Budapest?
The Hungarian cuisine is really meat heavy. The typical dishes that you don't want to miss are goulash. The Hungarian goulash is really
that's probably
really
the one
good.
that all of us knew. Okay.
And they make sausages that are kind of similar to German sausages, but they're different. So the sausages are really nice to try. Anything with the paprika, the pepper spice.
Are the sausages going to be a little more spiced like that because they do like a little more spice in their food?
They are a little bit more spiced and flavorful than what you get in Germany. In Germany, you would really put like the condiments, the mustards and things on it. But this, you don't really need that because they do cook with the spices more in it. But again, with the pepper spice, you can get it mild, you can get it spicy. So they're pretty good about asking you, and you're not going to have something that just puts your mouth on fire.
Well, when we say asking you, so I'm assuming you speak little, if any, Hungarian.
I speak no Hungarian.
Difficult language, as we said. So you found not a problem getting around in terms of navigating the usual tourist experiences, hotel room meals, things like that?
No, people speak English a lot in Hungary, so it's really not an issue. You don't have a language barrier there.
Okay. I suspect we'd run into one more if we were out in the countryside or something.
In the countryside, the population tends to be a little bit older, so maybe they didn't learn to speak English or they don't speak it regularly, so it's a little bit more of a challenge. But in the city, it's very cosmopolitan these days, and it's a very attractive city for the younger people, and everyone just about speaks English now.
Okay. And speaking of younger people, you recommended that the younger people might be interested in a room bar, and those of us who are a little more sedate might be interested in a wine bar. Did you have either of those to recommend?
There's tons of them all over the city, and you really can't go wrong with wherever you wander into.
A room bar is a small bar that is in a residential flat or something? What is a room bar, first of all?
A room bar, it is a small kind of hidden secret.
Okay, a little more like a speakeasy.
Right. So these have been around for about 10 years now. They're in the Jewish quarter, and they popped up in abandoned buildings about a decade ago. So they were kind of like speakeasies, secret
Pop-up
places
bars,
to go, and the nightlife, music, dancing, that kind of thing. So these tend to be just around the Jewish quarter is where you want to go if you want to find the various ruin bars.
Is there any resource online we can use to find I imagine what's hot and what's not is going to change over time. So is there a Time Out magazine or something like that in Budapest that we can use to find that?
Yes, actually, there's a local magazine called Budapest Flow, and it's like the Time Out of Budapest. Excellent. So they talk about the different ruin bars and what's happening and different events and things going on. So that's where I would go to check out maybe which ones have something going on that you're interested in, which one you want to go to.
Okay. And then wine bar, did you have one that you would recommend? Besides the secret one under the castle.
The secret one under the castle is, of course, great, and you can go there during the daytime or you can go in the evening time. It's kind of a romantic experience, too, so it's good for couples. But any of the cafes also have wine and palinka, which is a traditional liquor that is made in Hungary, which you have to try when you're there.
Now, is this like most of the traditional liquors in the region, which is you can also use to take paint off things? Or
no, it's not that bad. It's more of like a flavored schnapps. So one, you're going to be good, but it's not like you're drinking paint thinner. You can get them with different flavors and things like that. So palinka can actually be really enjoyable. But some of the nice wine bars to go to are, one is called Palek Wine Bar. That one is a really good one. You can also get coffee there too, if wine isn't your thing.
Excellent. Anything else we want to talk about in the Pest side that we should see or do?
I do want to mention just two places that you can go for sort of day trips outside of Budapest, which I think are really nice to do.
That was going to be my next question.
Okay. You can actually do these together. You can combine them into a single day trip. And if you don't want to rent a car or you're not comfortable driving, you can book a tour to do this as a combined trip to these two stops. I would recommend that you go on a day trip to Visegrad. It's a small town that's on the right bank of the Danube River, which is the Pest side. And this little town has a citadel, so a little castle on top of it. And it looks over this beautiful bend in the Danube River, and just the countryside out here is gorgeous. And this citadel in Visegrad also has a link with Dracula. So it's said that this is the real Dracula's castle, and that Vlad Tepes was imprisoned here. So he was imprisoned in the tower in 1462 to 1474. So they say that this is the real Dracula's castle, since Vlad Tempest never actually lived in Bran Castle in Transylvania. So if you're into that Dracula history, you have that link, aside from it just being a really beautiful spot to explore.
Okay.
And then the other place that you can go and you can combine with Visegrad is a little town called, oh, I don't even want to say it because I'm going to just butcher the name of it. Szentendre, I think is the close pronunciation of it. And this small little town here is also right on the river. And it was built in the 2nd century AD. So it's really, really old, has an interesting history with the Mongols and then the Turks coming and destroying the town, being rebuilt in the Baroque 17th century style, which is the architecture that we see today. So it's super charming to wander around. And there's actually quite a few museums to go to here. So if you're into quirky museums, one of the museums that you can go to is a marzipan museum.
Okay.
And they have made life-size figures of Princess Diana and Michael Jackson out of marzipan. They have,
of course they have.
The Parliament building in Budapest made out of marzipan. So it's kind of cool to wander through there and see what these marzipan makers have been able to concoct into these artful creations. So you have that there. And if you're into the wine that we've been talking about, there's also a National Wine Museum here in Szentendre. So you can go to the National Wine Museum, and the Wine Museum has a fantastic restaurant where you can have lunch. So there's sort of different levels to it. And you can either dine in the cellar amongst all of the old wine bottles, or there's a hunter's room in the restaurant. This cellar system is 220 years old. So you can taste and buy wines there as well. And it's a good place to eat. So I think that those two places are a really nice day trip that you can do. And you can really do both in one day that you can go to from Budapest.
Excellent. You mentioned museums there. We didn't talk. Are there any museums you would recommend in Budapest?
I would consider the Parliament sort of a museum because you're getting the history of Budapest there, as well as the importance of the Parliament. And there's the National Museum. There is a House of Terror.
And this is about World War II and post? Or are we talking about early?
This goes through the fascist and the communist regimes of the 20th century at the House of Terror. You have art museums. So there's the Fine Arts Museum. There's Military Museum there that goes through different periods of history. The Military Museum goes through the conquest leading up to when the communist regime came into play. There's the Holocaust Memorial Center that you can visit. There's a natural history museum. There's the underground museums that talk about their underground railway systems. Oh my gosh, there's so many more.
Okay.
I think you could probably do 5 days alone if you love museums of just going to various museums in Budapest.
Well, and then the other thing that you can do to help us choose in terms of how we're going to spend our times is, what are people going to recommend that you would recommend we skip if we only had 4 or 5 days in Budapest?
I personally skip a lot of the museums. I want to spend my time outdoors and exploring the beauty of the city. And I think that for me, the food is always really important because food doesn't have a language barrier. Everyone can appreciate good food. And Budapest has this long, complicated history under all of these different regimes, but the food has remained traditional, and the same recipes were handed down through the families, and the same things were enjoyed for centuries. So I always like to kind of focus my time on enjoying more of the experiences and where I can mix with the locals. And I think for me, that's the market hall. And even though tourists go to the baths these days, you still find a lot of locals. You'll see these old Hungarian men at the bathhouses, and they play these chess games on boards that are set up in the water. And you have this opportunity to connect and be doing what the locals are doing on a normal day. And so I think those are the things not to miss.
Excellent. Best time of year to go to Budapest?
I have been at all different times of the year. And one of the things that we didn't talk about is if you go during the holiday season, there's really great Christmas markets. And just an entirely different ambiance than if you're there any other time of the year. It's similar if you've been to a European Christmas market or a German Christmas market, and you have all of the different vendors that are selling not only special foods that they eat during the holidays, but different things that you can take home, the different
Christmas
Hungarian
ornaments and things.
Christmas ornaments, but also the traditional products and things that they make. And they've done these really nice animations. One of the Christmas markets sets up in front of the St. Stephen's Cathedral, and they do a projection of a light show on the cathedral behind the Christmas market. And it's just, they change the theme of it each year, and it sort of tells a story. And it's a really nice time of the year to have an entirely different experience there. So I like being there during the holidays. I think the best time is in the fall. If you go into the countryside, like to Visegrad and Szentendre, you have the beautiful fall colors on the trees. The weather is just fantastic. The temperatures are really comfortable for being outdoors and wandering around, and it's just a nice time to go. So I think fall is my favorite time to be there.
Okay. Any particular festivals you would recommend we go to that you have haven't had a chance to be there for?
I haven't had a chance to be there for any other festivals. Okay. We did go for New Year's Eve one year, and it was a little bit disappointing because the city doesn't organize anything for New Year's Eve. So there's no public display of fireworks or anything like that. So if you're going to go for New Year's Eve and you want some sort of party ringing in the new year experience, you'll have to book something, either a hotel or a restaurant that's having some sort of event, because there isn't anything that is organized by the city.
Okay. I know that there's a wine festival at the Budapest Castle in September, because we're going to be there for that. But there's no other ones that I'm aware of. You're standing in the prettiest spot in Budapest. Where are you standing and what are you looking at?
Definitely the park overlooking the chain bridge with the Parliament beyond. That's the spot.
Okay, excellent. And one thing that makes you laugh and say only in Budapest?
The Hungarian men playing the board games in the pools.
Excellent. And if you had to summarize Budapest in 3 words, what 3 words would you use? Beautiful, affordable, and interesting. Excellent. Our guest again has been Jennifer Dombrowski. If we wanted to send people to the best post you have on Lux Adventure Traveler about Budapest, what post would we send them to? I have a wrap-up post that is a things to do in Budapest, and it has everything that we've talked about. Excellent, excellent. Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes. Jennifer, thanks again for coming back on Amateur Traveler, sharing with us your love for Budapest. Thanks for having me. And remember, if Budapest sounds like a place you might be interested in going, there may still be a spot or two on the trip that we're doing in September of 2018. We got a comment from Patrick on the show that we did on Chengdu. Said, "Hey Chris, the show rocks. I listen on my commute every day.
I've been working in China for almost 6 years now, so I especially love the China episodes. You and Jessica spent a minute discussing tools and resources that make it easier to travel in China. I want to add Apple Maps to those resources for any future travelers. You can use it all in English, and you can even use the public transit option on it if you want to avoid taxis. I've been to some small and out-of-the-way cities, and Apple Maps has never failed me. Apple has done such a good job with it. I will stick exclusively with iPhones as long as I'm here. And another great app for China is Trip.com. I thought it was worth mentioning as I listened to the Xi'an episode. Again, it's in English. You can look up the train route you want, choose the train you want, and show the people at the ticket office to make it a little easier. I hope this helps some people visiting China in the future. Patrick. Thanks, Patrick. Trip.com, I didn't know. Apple Maps I use all the time, although I'm a little surprised because a lot of people still recommend Google Maps over Apple Maps, so it's interesting that you're having such a good experience in China with Apple Maps. With that, we're going to end this episode of Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com. Don't forget to visit AutoSlash and follow us on your favorite social media application. You can find all the places we are on social media at amateurtraveler.com. And thanks so much for listening.
I got to see one more